I will in this video try to explain something that I have experienced myself. I've been a victim of this myself in relationships to two exes. And it's still ongoing with my ex-husband, but I'm luckily out of it with my ex-partner. And what happened is that in relationship to these men, I had women friends and women helpers in the public system who are of this type of woman. Women who see men as children. And I will in this video try to explain what happens in this scenario. I have, as said, if this is me as an adult, I have had partners male partners. I have had more than two, but I will draw two men here. So then I have had female friends, women friends. Let me draw three of them so that you see that they are actually quite many. And these are also helpers in the Norwegian public system. And in these relationships between me and these men, what has happened is that these women here, drawn in blue, they have started protecting these men against me. Isn't that a bit weird? Yes, it is. So what is going on with these women who believe that they have to protect grown men from their own partner? Well, this child over here, so this is in adulthood. This has happened in adulthood. This child over here are these women in blue in their childhoods. And this child, they had an abusive parent. Let's draw angry parent. And this parent was abusive or neglectful. And what they tried to do with this child, that later grew up to be one of these women in blue, or all of them, they tried to develop what I call a slave brain in their child. So this abuse and neglect done to this child was meant to, or resulted in, a slave brain in this child. And a slave brain, I have talked a lot about slave brain on my Twitter account, so I won't go into detail here. But what mainly happens with a child that gets a slave brain developed because of an abusive parent is that they stop. Let's see, let's do this in red. They have needs, but they stop noticing their own needs, and they project their own needs onto the abusive parent. And that is the whole point in developing a slave brain in a child. So the needs this child is feeling, the need for food, the need for sleep, their emotions and so on, the need for a hug and so on, is projected onto this parent, so that this parent makes sure that this child is constantly working to fulfill the needs of this parent, and that the child will completely forget that they are a human being too. And the other parent here, they might be either in on it, or they might be angry towards this parent and try to get this parent to stop abusing their child. But this slave brain being developed by the child makes the child angry with this parent, and they will start to protect this parent against this parent. So everything this child is doing is to cater to this parent. They are using a lot of energy, a lot of time. Their whole thinking pattern is about how to fulfill the needs of this parent and to protect this parent against other people trying to stop the abuse. What then happens in adulthood when this child grows up to be these women in blue here? What then happens is that they, after having projected their own needs onto the abusive parent, then they transfer that abusive parent onto adults, often of the same sex or gender, but it can be both. So what then happens in adult life is that these women here in blue, they now believe that their needs that they had as a child is now the needs of these grown men. So these grown men now has, in the minds of these women in blue, they have children's needs. So what these women in blue now do, they start working on fulfilling the needs of these men. And when they see that the partner of these men are not doing the same because she's normal, so she takes care of her own needs and she expects these men to take care of their needs, they project this parent onto their friend here. So what these women in blue then are doing is that they start attacking this friend of them in green. They start to attack her and protect these men. So they assume that this is an evil perpetrator and that these men are innocent children. So what has happened here is that a child being abused by a parent, developing a slave brain, in adulthood, they project the bad parent, that the believed bad parent, they believe that this is a bad parent, so they project that bad parent onto their friend, and they project this believed good parent onto the partners of their friends. So they protect men as if men were children, and they attack women as if women were abusers of men. What needs to happen is that these women here, they need to stop meddling in the life of their friends. They need to stop concentrating on their friend in green here. They need to stop concentrating on these men in green here. And they have to go back to their childhood together with a therapist, for example, if they can find a good one, and work on why they developed a slave brain, and to accept that once upon a time, this was the abusive parent. Not this one, it might be both, but in this scenario, not this one. This was the abuser, they were abused. And these people over here, they have nothing to do with it.